Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me at the art table again today. And I am joined, as you can see, by Ishi and Kat Rocha from 01 Publishing. Ishi is the author of Boobs of Steel, and Kat Rocha is 01's editor. And I'm really excited to talk to them about their project. If you haven't seen it already, I have a brief overview and review of the book on the channel already. I'll include a link to that, as well as a link to Amazon where you can pick that up, and a place where you can go and check out everything that 01 is doing right now. They have a lot of other interesting projects that are worth checking out there. In the meantime, welcome, Kat and Ishi. It's great to have you here.
Hello there. Well, I had asked to come on because you had given Boobs of Steel, now available on Amazon, a fairly good review, although you did conclude with saying it was very niche and that you felt you really weren't informed enough for the right audience to really review it.
Yeah, I think, whenever you talk about, and I guess it bears mentioning again here, this is more of a nonfiction book.
Right.
You talk a lot about storytelling, which is a subject I enjoy a lot. But it's really talking about the history of different subgenres and the approach to a specific trope. So why don't we start there and work our way into it? Why were you so passionate about this particular subject? I know you talk about it in the book, but you want to give the audience a quick bird's eye
what
view.
it was is it's not so much about boobs per se, but rather the fact that all of our heroic feminine archetypes are it's really about femininity being removed from our media, that our heroines cannot be attractive females anymore, that a lot of these age-old tropes of the Amazonian woman are all being wiped away. I mean, the image of feminine strength being unique and different from male strength seems to be completely offensive to the woke crowd. And we're seeing all of our female heroes become second-rate males. And I think that's very detrimental. It's a severe loss to storytelling. But, eventually you keep crapping on femininity and the heroic aspects of femininity. Pretty soon you get a society where teenage girls are cutting their boobs off and dressing like young men because they don't want to be female. Go figure.
Yeah, I think that's... sorry, go ahead.
And the archetypes that I talk about, as I demonstrate in the book, have been with us since the beginning of humanity. They serve a purpose. They have a place within our mind because we need them. So, yeah, it isn't just titillation. These characters don't exist for titillation merely. What do you think?
No, I agree. I mean, this most recent, what is it, Gears of War video that came out where they put in Lara Croft, but it was basically like the facsimile of Lara Croft on top of a man. She walked like a man. She stomped around like a man.
Yeah, they had the mocap was a man.
Yeah, the mocap was totally male. And so the whole point of playing this, beautiful, sexy, treasure hunter was completely lost. It was gone. Besides the fact that they pared down her boobs, that's just, the cherry on the top there. It's this whole defeminizing of, female archetypes.
And I felt that it was important not just to talk about putting these characters back into your stories, talk about why these characters are important. And when they say, oh, well, that's sexist. No, it isn't. It absolutely is not sexist. I felt it wasn't important just to explain that, but I needed the audience to know what we had lost, what had been taken away from them. And that's why the history's in there. That's why I get into anime and what happened in Japan, why I talk about the 80s, and why I give an entire history from Greece all the way to, I think, the 1970s on the Amazon archetype.
So all the way from ancient myth to fairly recent cinema. That's right. How much research did you do? Did you have a specific set of works you already had in mind when you started? Or did you start by assembling your thoughts and then looking for other scholars who had written on the subject? I know you used a lot of very scholarly sources while you were working on the book. So which side did you start from?
Kat, why don't you comment? You watched this in real time.
Okay. He started with the things he knew, and definitely started with, you know, like the history of Wonder Woman, for instance, because she's on the cover, and publications like Anita Sarkeesian's Feminist Frequency, and things that were known. And then as the journey progressed, he found more and more information. He would engage in spirited debate, shall we say, online, and people would throw other viewpoints at him, and he did his due diligence and would go research.
And
other things where in his research, he would discover that there were topics that he needed to look into that he hadn't planned on, like the poor man spending 2 weeks researching Rococo art because it needed to be done.
I over-researched. In fact, I think I fell down quite a big rabbit hole, and I had no idea it would be this big a subject. That I'm going to do 3 of these at least. And they're all pretty much in states of completion.
Yeah, keep in mind, this began as him going to do an essay, and now it's 3 books.
And it was just, I kept falling further and further down the rabbit hole. And I would say the seed of it that really started it was your Power Girl essay and your experiences at Comic-Cons. And just this bizarre thing that happened in the aughts when the feminists and the women started flooding into the conventions.
Women with a Y.
Y. And the comic scene, you got all these gender studies twits. And they kept screaming feminism, but all they were really doing was getting rid of anything feminine. And chasing out the women who were already there.
Sure. Yeah. You chose to examine this through the lens of the Boobs of Steel trope, which you define at the beginning of the book. And you use TV tropes as a source, which is is that even
dubious.
Still on TV tropes?
Strangely, after the book was published, it got removed.
That's what I had heard. I have not checked on
I'm
that
a little
myself.
Weirded out that I published this book, and not a month later, it's gone.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was removed very recently.
Okay. Is there a particular reason, though, you wanted to use that trope? You could have talked about femininity more broadly. So why that trope in particular?
Well, one, because other people had tackled it from that angle, and it always fell into getting into half-assed feminist arguments and New Age bullshit. Is cursing okay on your show?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And always handle with kid gloves. But to be honest, I chose boobs for the very reason that is the thing that was attacked. From the beginning, when the women showed up, the feminists and the gender studies types came to comics and video games and sci-fi. What is the first thing they bitched about? Oh, her tits are sexist. It was always the beginning. You had an entire DCU of females, but it was Power Girl that they hated. She was the problem. And once they got rid of her, then they moved on to Wonder Woman, and you go down the list. But then I found there was a whole history of it, that in the 70s, the exact same thing happened. Feminists were trying to claim Wonder Woman as their mascot, but at the same time, it divided the movement, because the other half of the movement was like, there's no way that we're having a beauty queen represent us. Her boobs are too big. She's heroic. She's not a real... And you go even further than that. You got the communists going after, again, the breast. That was the first thing. What is the signifier of female? The most obvious visual signifier, breasts. So own it. I decided, forget it. I'd own it. And again, because of your essay and the attacks you received, that it became abundantly clear to me that the left has a severe problem with female breasts. And I think it has to do with the fact that it's a visible difference between male and female.
Well, that and men like them.
Yeah, exactly.
That is true.
And, it's perfectly fine to like them. Why is that bad? Seriously.
Not bad.
It's always taken. That was the other thing that always upset me. Those boobs are sexist. Why?
Right.
We're just supposed to take their word for it. Kat,
You know,
tell about your experience.
What was you gonna?
I was gonna say, I was actually discussing this book on a stream last week, and one of the things, I can't remember if it was as I was talking about it with a host during the stream or afterwards, but one of the things he mentioned is that something that seems to bother people a lot is that women don't like it when men admit that they judge a woman's level of femininity. And I think they don't like that because they don't want to admit men are one of, the most sensitive measuring sticks for how feminine a woman is. I guess no pun intended there, but every man does tend to measure the femininity of a woman, and one of the things we look at is how they look.
Yeah.
And I think that is, I have seen the same attack myself on many different aspects of femininity, boobs not the least. And that's one of the things that I've seen that I think drives it. Women don't like to admit that their femininity is in part determined by how men react to them.
Well, women also don't like the idea that they have to compete for the so-called male gaze. They would rather, men just throw money at them, that men just marry them, that men just put up with them. And it's like, no, if, there are standards that women look for in a man, whether they're, physically fit, they look like Chris Hemsworth, if they've got money, if women are going to judge men, men can judge women. This is not new. This is forever. This is something that we've always done. It's just nowadays, especially in the first world, we're in a state where things are comfortable enough for women to feel that they can bitch about the fact that they're in competition.
Yeah, I love the joke online. I won't date anyone who isn't over 6 feet tall. And the guy responds, I won't date anyone who's over 120 pounds.
Yeah.
And then what? Of course, that's sexist.
Right.
Yeah. Well, which is sexist? Yeah.
It seems perfectly fine that women can have standards, but men can't. Excuse me.
No, I'm sorry. Men and women can be picky, and quite frankly, should be picky. Being in competition means the best of the best get to hook up with people and deal with it. Sorry.
And as far as breasts being a feminine signifier, I think that it's taken too literally. These heroines are hyper feminine because they're embodiments of feminine strength. Mm-hmm. What would feminine strength look like but hyper feminine? You put the same character and make him look like a dude or a little boy, it's not going to communicate the same symbolic message. It's not going to read as feminine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not only that, but women like playing hot women. I mean, look at Bayonetta. I know more females who love Bayonetta, want to be Bayonetta, than I do males who play her or even familiar with who she is.
I mean, or here's another one. The famous scene where Jessica Rabbit comes out and sings, right? That scene would come across as utterly comical if it was Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah.
It's just reality.
Yeah. So I know you said you've seen people come into comics and kind of subvert this depiction of femininity. And I mean, do they have a playbook beyond just saying it's sexist that you've observed, like historically?
Sure.
Over how do they go about it?
They come in because we're open to everybody. We welcome them in the door. Yeah, everybody was welcome. They start screaming and yelling, this is sexist, that is sexist. Hey, there are no women in positions of power. Dumb people say, oh, well, you're right. Okay, let's put a woman in power. After a while, your entire organization is inhabited by woke people. You're publishing comic books that are propaganda. Your art quality's gone to crap. It's all politics and message, and your industry burns to the ground.
Okay. And do you think that, because I've noticed I have a mother and two sisters, they're all pretty chesty women, and yet they still seem to have this same cultural objection to, they say, the sexualized way women are shown in media. Do you think that's a cultural thing, or is there something else at work there?
That's feminism is at work trying to dehumanize us. Men want to look at attractive women. Women want to look at attractive men. That's been a part of the human experience from the beginning. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with valuing or admiring that period of youth in a woman's life. There's nothing wrong with that part of it. And to rob that from us, I mean, essentially, we're being robbed of all our human traits. We have to be these kind of faceless drones who have no gender, who all look the same. And I think probably your mom and sister are, I'm sorry, probably are just puppeting the line that's been dumped on us for the last 50 years.
Well, like what I've observed in television, and I'm going to use as an example, all these Star Wars shows that Disney has been putting out, The Mandalorian. You had Katie Sackhoff's character. I'm sorry, I don't watch the show, but I've seen the pictures. There was all of that, hype of, oh my God, she's got boob armor. Oh, wow, the armor has some bumpage up at the top. Yeah, that's normal.
We've gone from good boobs are bad to any boobs are bad.
And you have Rosario Dawson playing Ashoka right now. I actually heard that and I got excited. I don't like Ashoka. I don't really like that character, but but I'm a fan of Star Wars, and I appreciated that they got Rosario Dawson to play older Ashoka. She's running around wearing a trash bag. She doesn't need to be wearing a Slave Leia bikini, but my fucking God, it's Rosario Dawson under there. And there's nothing for me to look at.
Also, busty women in general have been shamed to no end and stereotyped slutty and stupid.
Mm-hmm.
So busty women themselves become very self-conscious, which is really mean. I mean, you notice that there's all this talk about body positivity, unless you have boobs or hourglass.
You're not fat unless you have boobs, and then you're fat, and then you need to get rid of them.
Right.
So they talk about body shaming unless you have curves, and then no, you have to get rid of that.
There's a general war on the very concept of beauty, but let's face it, there are things that are aesthetically pleasing, and there are things that are ugly, and that's just life. I am perfectly comfortable with the fact that, women prefer tall men. I'm 5'6". I am not a tall man. I don't see men marching in the streets demanding that women date short men. Women, tall men shouldn't be portrayed in media. We need to get rid of all the buffs. No, because I don't know. What is it? Just men aren't as self-conscious? What do you think?
Well, I think it just gets beat out of us from a young age. So I was definitely a lot more self-conscious about that kind of thing when I was younger. But you don't get anywhere as a man if you indulge that, whereas women can get a lot farther. Sometimes indulging their self-consciousness is the way they advance. So at least that's just what I've seen. Not a huge scholar on it, but a lot of anecdotal evidence, I think, that supports it. But specifically on your book, you say you have 3 of them. Last I heard it was 2, so clearly we are still expanding on this theme. Can you give us a sneak peek of what the rest of the series is going to look like? Is there more history to come, or?
It always had been, it was going to be 4. I never said 2. It was going to be 4, but okay. I think I can get it done in 3. The next portion, I get into some of the other archetypes because I primarily focus on the Amazon, but that was because all of our heroic feminine archetypes, action hero types, are offshoots of that Amazon, at least here in the West. So I'm going to get into the Valkyrie, the Bad Girl, the Jungle Queen. Those are the main ones. And I might get into Japan's Lovely Warrior, which has no relation to the Amazon and is unique into itself. So I'll get into those. I'll explore more of what the difference is between feminine and masculine and power in terms of real life, but more importantly, in terms of literary symbolism for writers. And then I'm going to talk about the phenomena of fear of the feminine and just how there has been a war on femininity for the last 20 years at least, maybe longer. So that is probably book 2. It's still up in the air how many chapters will be in that. And then the last one is all culture war. I dive right into the culture war. The third one's going to be spicy. I get into Power Girl and the campaign against her that's gone on since around 1998, 95 maybe. There's been an ongoing campaign against her. I get into the fact that there's been an ongoing campaign against Lara Croft since at least 1995. And I use those both as case studies for one, comics, then video games, and then I do She-Ra as a case study for media, for like animation. And I compare the new and old She-Ra and all the political going-ons inside the creative process, and just how much the original was perfect. What the creators did with the original She-Ra was pure genius. They created a heroine designed and tailored specifically on what little girls wanted. I mean, it was a list of what little girls wanted that created that character. And the second She-Ra, the one we got now, is blatant trans propaganda. And that's not even in question. I prove it. They basically, one of the intents was to get kids to experiment and question their gender. Yeah. So I get into those 3 case studies. I get into a case study on what happened in the sci-fi scene, because that's pretty interesting as well. Because while I talk about specifically Friday and Robert Heinlein, and how within the sci-fi community, there's always been, and it's blatantly, I mean, they're admittedly communists that have been trying to strip heroism, femininity, American values out of our sci-fi. And I mean, again, it's by admission, it's not some secret. And so I do a case study on that using Heinlein's Friday. And then there's a final chapter in which I do a where we go from here and why this is important.
Okay. So I was going to ask, do you have like a grand plan to rebuild the archetype, or do you think that's not needed? Do you think it will just eventually reconstitute itself?
Well, as far as rebuilding the archetype, the best I can do is put them in my stories, and whenever appropriate, I do. I mean, definitely, while she's not an Amazon, Glinda in Case File Arkham is absolutely feminine. Happy in Titanium Rain definitely has some Valkyrie qualities to her. So there's those two. And Siege Engine has a very interesting brawny beauty in it.
Okay.
So that, I mean, as far as rebuilding, I think what's more important for me is to educate and give creators across the board an education in how to create these characters, how to write these characters, how to use them, and how to defend themselves against the attacks when people start saying, well, you can't do that. That's sexist. Like, no, it isn't. It's about as reaffirming to women as we can get. It's human.
Sure. So you mentioned Siege Engine. I know that's your current fiction project. Do you want to tell us
Yes.
a little bit about that?
Siege Engine was kind of an outgrowth of the fact that BattleTech went woke. And there was that horrible thing that happened in Blaine Pardo, where this transsexual started lying and making death threats, and the company sided with the crazy person and fired one of their longtime writers. And Blaine's a great writer. And at the time, I'd been writing a short story, which I had intended to sell to the BattleTech magazine. I forget what it's called, Shrapnel or something like that. I had been working on a short story, and my thought after that was, well, screw it. I'll just do my own, big stompy mech franchise and adventures to sell to BattleTech fans, because BattleTech's gone to hell. And just started having a lot of fun doing it. It's got a lot of old school cyberpunk overtones to it, but the initial idea, it turned into something else. It really did turn into something else. But the initial seed when I was writing the story for the BattleTech magazine was, well, what if you had a mercenary crew and your main characters were Archer and Pam Poovey from the show Archer? Because, you always get these very serious, hardened warriors. They're out there fighting with honor, or they're these war-hardened, just badasses. And what if they're screw-ups? What if these people are as retarded as Ralt's Bloodthorn is always saying military people are? And so a lot of his stories about just all the shenanigans of him being in the military and the insanity of what he experienced started influencing it. So you've got this story about this mercenary corps in a kind of screwed up cyberpunk future that has 8-meter tall mechs in it, and they're a mercenary crew that gets hired for various jobs, and they're all insane. I mean, all of them are out of their minds, and it's kind of a shit show. The story opens with a bar fight, and they had a horrible mission prior, so they go to a bar to drink themselves stupid, get in a fight, and it only leads to more problems, and that's how the adventure begins.
Nice.
And how would you describe the world? There's a real insanity to it.
80s, 90s style anime.
Really?
Yeah.
You think? And there's also kind of Achilles heroes to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would say about the setting is the only real holdover is there is a character that is very much inspired by Pam Poovey in Adventure Island. The Adventure Island season of Archer, when she's a 6-foot-tall, muscle-bound mercenary. That's about the only holdover.
Okay.
And yeah, it has a lot of Archerisms in it.
Interesting. I'm not real familiar with that show. I've only seen a couple of episodes, so it'd be interesting to see what it looks like in a mecha environment.
Oh, and because he gave me permission, there is a character based on Ralt's.
That should be interesting.
Who talks like Ralt's and has some of Ralt's stories included in.
Nice.
Including getting struck by lightning twice and falling out of a helicopter.
All right. Is it an actual helicopter, or is it the sci-fi equivalent of a helicopter?
Oh, I think I don't know. I think it was a helicopter. I said that. I just mentioned that in his backstory, that this guy just can't seem to die.
Sure.
That all these horrible things happen to him. Oh, and his girlfriend's a midget. Is a very sexy midget.
Yeah.
Appropriate.
Again, inspired by Ralt's.
Yeah. So I know you also have some very experimental projects at 01 Publishing. You want to tell people about your experiments with AI romance?
Oh,
I know you have another
Richard
author
Steele
who works
is kind
on
of an
that.
interesting situation.
Richard Steele's fun.
Well, Richard Steele, the professional romance writer, who under a pseudonym decided to use writer AI to write him romance stories and then rewrite them as humorous.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first book is more straight ahead what was written by the AI, and then it was
Edited to read
edited to read more normal, but
read coherently.
yeah. But the second book, the butt steak deal, that one was written by the AI, and then Richard edited it to be
An actual story.
Exactly.
Keeping all the bizarre insanities the AI threw in. But yes, Richard Steele with an E at the end. And the butt stick deal, I think, is kind of the shining gem in his collection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have Robomancer. I've read a couple stories in that, but I haven't picked up your second one there.
What do you think of Robomancer?
It's like a drug trip, except in pixels.
Yeah, the second one, the butt stick deal, is far more coherent. But yeah, that first one, Robomancer, is just a collection of stories where the AI was continually prompt to write these stories, and then it was cleaned up so it's legible. Yeah, I'm not worried about AI replacing us anytime soon.
No.
Right.
Although it may nanny us for oral hygiene.
Interesting. Okay.
Although I don't think AI can do any worse than the current day Marvel story or Star Wars.
I've seen some of the story summaries ChatGPT puts out, and they do look a lot like the modern Marvel movie. So, we may be getting AI stories already. I wonder about it sometimes.
I think so.
Yeah.
They really want to get rid of the writers.
Well, the writers, are the writers still on strike?
Yes.
Well, there you go.
They may be rid of them now.
But the current quality of writing from Hollywood, it isn't really a loss.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
It kind of was already in the Mad Libs category, so it just might as well have have an AI play Choose Your Own Adventure.
Which was what the AI kept spitting out. It was like Mad Libs.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, have you got any other projects you want to let people know about going?
I have other stuff on the back burner, and it's kind of a thing where I just need to finish it. But right now, with Boobs of Steel out, I want to put all of my attention to getting Siege Engine done as soon as possible so I can publish it. I'm really anxious. I'm very pleased with what I've got so far. I've got an introduction written. I've got a 10,000 word first chapter. And the second chapter is nearly done. Third chapter nearly done. So it's on its way.
But we will be continuing our Immortal Classics series, which is publishing pulp stories that have basically become forgotten, and that just shouldn't be.
That'll probably be the next thing we publish.
We've already have one volume out so far, Ridiculum, which is sci-fi humor stories, including did we put Marching Morons in there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or no, we didn't. We didn't include that.
We did not. Okay, we're doing that in the other one. Okay.
That'll go in Dystopian.
Okay. But no, we have a lot of humorous sci-fi stories by like Philip K. Dick, C.L. Moore, a lot of classic stories by known writers, but because these people have gone on to other things, these stories have been forgotten. Or in the case of Philip K. Dick, is not the popular story.
Philip K. Dick, Robert Sheckley, C.L. Moore and her husband Henry Kuttner. There's John McDonald's another one. Most people don't even know he wrote sci-fi. He's primarily known for his.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, he's primarily known for his crime and mysteries, but yeah, he did a fair amount of sci-fi. And the one that's in Ridiculum, I think, is one of the gems. It's a court drama, and the twist is all the crazy stuff the defendant is saying as to why he didn't commit murder turned out to be true.
Interesting.
Because up until that point, you just think he's out of his mind, but I don't want to ruin it. So,
okay.
Yeah, my favorite story is Chain of Command.
Oh, yeah. Hyper-intelligent mice.
Yes, hyper-intelligent mice. Yeah, think humorous rats of Nim.
I told you Douglas Adams read that story.
I swear. Yeah, I think he did. You're right.
Well, that sounds interesting too. Hopefully, people will give at least one of those titles a look. And yeah, let us know down in the comments what you think of this discussion, the changing of femininity in culture. And we'll talk to you later.
And read Nate's story in Anvil.
Oh, yeah, that
Yes.
too. You can still get that. The Fund My Comic campaign is closed, but I think you can still get that on Indiegogo. So yeah, check that out too. Thank you for reminding me. And talk to you later.
All right.